Welcome to this video on the HEEADS assessment. So to start off with, what is the HEEADS assessment? The HEEADS assessment is an evidence-based screening tool for use with adolescents and young people to help build a psychosocial picture. It covers a range of domains, and since its appearance in the 1990s has been adapted as young people's lives have changed, changing some of the letters that are in it and adapting some of the questions. Crucially, it is not a tick box exercise to find out the minimum about each heading. It should be a holistic conversation that flows naturally and gives us a broader understanding of the young person. So why should we do it? It's important to understand the young person's background when thinking about diagnosis and about likely concordance with management. It's also an opportunity to check in with a young person. It's widely quoted in the literature as having a 1 in 3 pickup rate for clinically significant information, and it allows the young person to have time alone with a healthcare professional, helping them move towards adult care. So what do all of the letters stand for in the HEEADS assessment? H stands for home. What we want to know in this section is about who the young person lives with, but also what is home like for them. Where do they live? How do they feel about where they live? E is for education, finding out about the young person's school life. What year they're in, who do they spend time with at school, how do they get on with their teachers, are there any particular subjects they enjoy or aspirations they have around education? The next E is for eating. In this one, we want to find out about the young person's usual eating habits, not necessarily what may be going on in the acute illness. This helps us build a picture of whether they have a healthy, balanced diet, whether they may be undereating or overeating, and any feelings around this. The next A stands for activities and hobbies. In this section, we want to know what the young person does in their free time. What interests them? Do they do any sport or physical activities? What helps them feel relaxed when they may be feeling stressed or overwhelmed? D stands for drugs, smoking and alcohol. In this one, we want to know about whether the young person smokes or whether anyone around them in their life smokes, drinks or uses any other kind of drugs. S stands for sex, relationships and gender. In this section, we want to know whether the young person is in a relationship at the moment. If so, who with? What people do they tend to have relationships with? And how do they identify from a gender point of view? The next S stands for self-harm and suicide. How do they feel in themselves generally? What's their mood like? Have they had any thoughts of self-harm or suicide? And have they acted on any of these thoughts before? The next S stands for safety and social media. How safe does the young person feel in general, at home, at school, out and about? And also, what social media do they use? How do they use social media? Who do they talk to on social media? And do they feel safe in those settings? The final S stands for sleep. How is the young person sleeping? Do they sleep well? When they do go to sleep, do they find it easy to get to sleep? And do they have any kind of nighttime routine? Before starting a HEEADS assessment, there's a few things that it's important to do. Firstly, if the young person comes in with a parent or adult, it can be really helpful at the start of the consultation to make clear that later in the consultation you may wish to speak to the young person alone, if that's something that they would like to do. It can be helpful to do this at the start of the consultation because it signposts that this will happen later. And during this, it's really important to make clear that it's a standard part of consultations for yourself as a doctor, but also it helps the young person transition towards adult care. The next thing that it's important to do at the start, and also perhaps throughout the HEEADS assessment, is to assure confidentiality. It can be useful to check in with the young person's understanding of confidentiality, and then make clear to them that anything they share with you will stay between you and them. The only caveat to that may be if they tell you something that puts their life in danger. In this case, make clear to the young person that you may need to tell somebody, but if you are going to do that, you will let them know who and what will happen. What we'll do now is watch a brief scenario of a HEEADS assessment on a young person who's come into hospital with an asthma exacerbation. Okay, so now we've had a bit of a chat, Amy, about what's been going on with your asthma. I wonder if it would be okay, a bit like we mentioned earlier, for Mum to step out for a bit now and us have a conversation, just you and myself.
Yeah, that's fine.
Lovely.
Okay, alright, thanks very much.
I'll call you back in when we're ready.
Thank you.
See you, Mum.
Bye.
So before we chat today, there's some points where I might ask some questions that are a bit sensitive or about things that feel quite personal, and so I just want to check in with you before we do that, whether you've heard about something called confidentiality.
Yeah, I think I have.
Okay. What do you kind of understand about what that word means?
I suppose that I could tell you kind of anything, and that you won't go and tell Mum and Dad.
Yeah, great.
It stays between us.
Yeah, exactly. So when we talk about confidentiality in terms of with me, with the doctor, what we're thinking is that anything you tell me, as you say, will stay between you and me, and I won't tell mum and dad or anyone else for that matter. The only thing to add to that is if you were to tell me anything that made me worry that you might be in danger, then I might have to share that with someone. But if I was to do that, then I would let you know. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, how are things at home for you at the minute?
They're fine. Yeah. Really enjoy being at home.
And who do you live with at home?
It's me, mum, dad, and my little sister.
Okay.
Who does my head in. But we are quite close.
So you're quite close to your little sister.
Yeah.
Do you find she does your head in sometimes?
All siblings do.
Okay. And how old is your little sister?
She's 12.
Okay. And do you feel safe at home? You mentioned that things feel really good at home. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well. And in terms of school, what year are you in at school?
I'm just doing my first year of A-levels.
Okay. And what A-levels are you doing?
Biology, chemistry, and geography.
Okay. And so first year of A-levels, you're doing biology, chemistry, and just
geography.
Geography. Okay. And have you got any ideas of what you want to do after that?
I want to go to university, but I'm not kind of sure what I want to do yet.
Yeah. Okay. So you're wanting to go to university, but you're not too sure what you're wanting to do. I'm wondering what friends and things are like at school.
A few of my friends left after GCSEs to kind of go off to college, whereas I stayed at the same school. So it's been a bit tricky, but I've made some new friends, and new girls have joined, which is nice.
Okay, so you've made some new friends and you've got a friendship group at school.
Yeah.
Okay. And how do you get on with your teachers at school?
Yeah, fine. I don't tend to get into trouble too often.
Okay. And thinking sort of outside of school and sort of routine at home, I'm wondering what your sort of diet's like.
Fine, I think.
Okay, so what do you sort of eat in a day?
Breakfast isn't great. I'm normally in a rush to get to school on time, so I might have a piece of toast or a banana as I'm walking out the door.
Yeah.
So I have lunch at school, which is, just school food, isn't it? It's not the best, but I like pasta on a Wednesday.
Okay.
And then, mum or dad normally cook dinner, and that's kind of alright.
Okay, so breakfast can be a bit rushed. Lunch is usually what school's kind of serving.
Yeah.
And dinner is kind of whatever mum and dad cook. Okay. And in terms of sort of your free time, what do you like to do in your free time?
I like running. It's been a bit tricky with the asthma, and I've not been able to do it as much as I want to or run as far as I want to. Okay. But we quite like a family board game as well at the weekend. So. Okay.
So it sounds like you like do some physical activity like running, but also spending time with your family and kind of board games.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, times where maybe you can't go running because of your asthma and you may be feeling a bit stressed or a bit upset. Is there anything that kind of helps you feel relaxed in those times?
It's quite a tricky one, and running's kind of my go-to. So I think I'm not very good at coping with stress when I can't run. Yeah. But mum kind of always tells me go for a walk instead.
Okay. And how does that feel for you?
Yeah, it's alright, I suppose.
Okay. So your ideal would be running, but when you're finding that you can't do that, you find that doesn't help with relaxing.
Yeah.
Okay. And so I just want to remind you a little bit about some of the questions I ask now. In the next bit might be a little bit sensitive, so I just want to remind you that anything you share with me here is just between you and me. Obviously, you've come in because of having sort of your asthma getting a bit worse, and we've kind of sort of managed that, and it sounds like you're feeling a bit better. Sometimes when we talk to young people with things like asthma, there's certain reasons that those things might have gotten a bit worse. So things, for example, like smoking or vaping. I'm wondering if that's something that you've tried before.
Is it all confidential then, what I tell you?
Yeah, so anything you tell me, as I say, unless I'm worried about your safety, and that would mean sort of, that you're in quite imminent danger, stays between you and me, and so I won't share that with mum or share that with anyone else.
I do vape.
Okay.
Mum doesn't know. Dad, no one at home kind of knows.
Yeah.
But I did start vaping a couple of months ago.
Okay, so you started vaping a couple of months ago. Tell me a bit more about that. Who do you vape with?
Just my mates, just at school.
Yeah. Okay. And so you've been vaping for a couple of months now, and how often are you sort of vaping?
Every day.
Okay.
But that's what everyone does.
Okay. So you're finding that lots of your friends are doing that as well?
Yeah.
And in terms of the vaping and your asthma, how has that felt like it's impacted on your asthma?
I've landed up in here,
Okay.
so
Yeah.
it's not been ideal, but I just want to fit in.
Yeah.
I don't like having my inhalers and having to be the kid with asthma. So
yeah. So it sounds like vaping is really important for you in terms of keeping your
yeah.
Okay. And sometimes when we're talking to people who are vaping, there's lots of young people that we talk to as well that might have tried sort of different recreational drugs. I'm wondering if that's something that you've been offered or that you've tried before.
No, I've not tried them.
Okay. And what about alcohol?
Maybe at a party.
Okay.
But I've never got really drunk.
Okay.
I'm normally having to look after my friends.
Okay. So you're normally looking after your friends in situations where you've been drinking with others.
Yeah.
It tends to be at parties.
Yeah.
And how much would you usually drink at a party?
Bit of cider, a couple of cans of cider, a pack of cider, something like that.
Okay, so a couple of cans of cider, a pack of cider, but you never felt like you'd gotten really drunk, and so you've never had sort of times where you can't remember what's happened?
No.
Okay. And then the other thing we sometimes talk to young people about in these consultations is things around sort of relationships and sexual health, because sexual health is a really important part of your health. So I'm wondering if you're in a relationship at the moment.
Yeah, I am.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell me a little bit more about that?
So we met at school, but she's left now to go to a different college. Been together for about a year or so.
Okay.
It was difficult coming out to mum and dad, but I think it's hard for them to understand generationally. It's a little bit challenging, but they are supportive, and she does come round and will join us on a Sunday for a board game or whatever at home.
Okay, so you're in a relationship with a girl at the moment, and that's been going on for about a year.
Yeah.
And it sounds like things are quite positive, although there's been some difficulty with kind of telling your parents about that. Yeah. And in terms of you and yourself and your gender identity, are there any particular pronouns that you prefer to use?
I just go by she, her.
She, her. Okay. That's really helpful for me to know in terms of sort of when we're talking. And in terms of sort of the other side of that, so we talked about relationships in terms of sexual health. So have you been sexually active with your girlfriend?
Yeah, we have.
Okay. And have you got any sort of questions around safe sex and things?
No, it's fine. We're both 16. It's all consensual and everything, so.
Fine. And then one of the other things we sometimes talk to young people about is around sort of how they're feeling emotionally. And so you mentioned a little bit about having some stress and things and struggling to cope with that a bit with your running. I'm wondering how your mood is generally.
That's a big question.
Yeah.
It's a lot more difficult going into A levels.
Yeah.
I think I put a lot of pressure on myself.
Okay.
And I think a bit comes from home as well. They just want me to do well, but it can get misinterpreted occasionally. So life is a bit more stressful right now.
Okay. So life's a bit more stressful, and that sounds like it's mainly to do with kind of expectations on you and having started A levels. And sometimes when we talk to young people that are going through stressful times or are having sort of these negative feelings, they sometimes tell us about that they may have been sort of self-harming and things. I'm wondering if that's something you've ever had any thoughts around.
No, I haven't.
Okay. So you've not had any thoughts of self-harm?
No, one of my close friends has self-harm, so I'd never kind of go near it because I've seen kind of what it does.
Okay, so you've got a friend who self-harms, so
Yeah.
it sounds like you've been supporting them with that.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the other thing, kind of alongside that we ask young people about is whether they've had any thoughts around sort of ending their own life or suicide, and that can sometimes come along with those feelings of low mood.
No, I haven't, not at all.
So you've not had any feelings
No.
like that? Okay. And I want you to know that if you ever do have those feelings, then obviously we've got a confidential space here with either us or with your GP back home that you can share those feelings with. And then the last sort of thing we kind of talk about a little bit is, or a couple of things, is around sort of social media. So do you use social media at all?
Yeah.
Okay. And what kind of social media do you use?
Snapchat,
Okay.
Instagram, TikTok as well.
Yeah. And what sort of things do you do on those social media?
Like message mates and stuff. Send stupid photos with filters on.
Okay. And are all of those friends that you know in real life, or have you made any friends online?
No, they're all friends from real life.
Okay. And so online safety is really important. So obviously, if you are finding that strangers are kind of messaging you things, then again, that's something you may want to share with someone.
I get messages on Instagram from like sugar daddies, but it's just a block and delete kind of, and I can talk to mum about that as well. So she kind of told me what to do when it first happened.
Okay, so it sounds like you feel quite safe online then, and it sounds like you've got some ideas about what to do when maybe things don't feel so safe.
I think so.
Right. And the last thing we sometimes talk about is sleep. So how do you sleep generally?
I sleep all right. I struggle sometimes getting off to sleep.
Okay.
At the weekends, I can be up quite late partying and kind of socialising, which is really good fun, but I do end up sometimes a bit more tired.
Yeah. Okay. And when you're struggling to get off to sleep, is there anything that you find that helps?
I normally just put an audiobook on.
Okay. Okay, so an audiobook then helps you to go
Yeah.
to sleep. Okay. And when you do get to sleep, do you tend to find you sleep the whole night through, or do you wake up as you kind of through the night?
Normally sleep the whole night through.
Okay. But you mentioned that sometimes you can feel a bit tired because you're staying up quite late at the weekend socialising.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. So that kind of finishes off that section of our conversation, and that's really helpful for me to know lots about you. And it sounds like the vaping might be something we want to talk a little bit more about with regards to kind of your asthma. And it sounds like you're quite aware that that's made it a bit worse. So what we can do before we bring Mum back in, if you like, because I know that you don't want to share it with Mum, is maybe have a bit of a chat around sort of support that we could give you with the vaping, if that sounds okay.
Yeah, no, I definitely don't want Mum to know, so I'd rather have the conversation without her.
Yeah, no problem. Today we've covered the HEADS assessment, what it is and why we do it, and we've also shown you a brief scenario of what a HEADS assessment can look like in the real world. Remember, it's really important when performing a HEADS assessment to check the young person is happy to be seen alone and to signpost this at the start of the consultation to the adult or parent that they may be with. Confidentiality is also really key to explain, making sure the young person understands what confidentiality means and how it relates to them and the conversation you're about to have. When performing the HEADS assessment, it's really important that you're asking a variety of questions to the young person to cover all the domains, but it shouldn't feel like a tick box exercise. It should flow like a normal conversation, and there's a number of techniques you can use to do this, as demonstrated in the video.